45. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, The teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary get up and quickly go out. They followed her because they thought she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her were also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, See how he loved him. But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, Take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, already there is a stench because he had been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, Unbind him and let him go. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what Jesus did, believed in him.
So friends, you've got to admit that if this story were told today, it could be a story that seems very strange and spooky. Let's face it, we don't see that happening. You go down to the cemetery and suddenly someone rises from the grave. A very odd story, don't you think? First, especially to promise the kids a spooky story. And a spooky story they shall have. Do you ever wonder why when you go down to the cemetery at the end of the road, that they say that it is open from sunup to sundown? Well, I'm going to tell you why. You see, every morning, the first selectman used to get there first thing in the morning to open the gate to the cemetery. And while he was there, he could sit on a bench and he'd open up his morning copy of the Hartford Current newspaper to read. It was his favorite thing to do. This particular morning was a beautiful fall day. The leaves on the trees were red and orange and yellow. It was a golden sunrise. It was gorgeous. He was very happy to enjoy this last summery day. It was warm and pretty, but he knew that night there was going to come a storm. There was going to be a lot of wind and it was going to rain. So, he was so entranced with the beauty of the day that he set his newspaper down on the bench and he got up to walk around just to enjoy everything. It was so gorgeous. And he walked off and he totally forgot about his newspaper that was sitting on the bench. Well, later that night, it was total darkness at the cemetery. And the Essex policeman who was supposed to come and close the gate at night came by to do his job. He went down there, and first of all, it was probably 10 or 11 o'clock at night. The wind had started to kick up. There was a little sprinkle going on. You know, that October, November, ick weather. Now, this policeman was spooked enough to have to go to the cemetery late at night. He didn't like going there in the first place. And of course, it was windy. And the wind was causing weird sounds to happen all around him. You know, when the branches start to creak in a tree, or, you know, the leaves that had started to fall already, they were blowing across the road and scraping and making scaling sounds. It didn't sound all that good to him. And suddenly, as he went to close the gate, he saw off in the distance something moving. Of course, he didn't like that one bit. He saw it moving, and strangely, it kept on, it was growing, and then it shriveled down, and it would go here, and it would go there, and it was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And he yelled out, "Stop! Don't come any closer!" It didn't listen to him at all. And he kept coming closer and closer. And he kept on telling it to stop, so finally he pulled out his gun. And he said, "Stop or I'll shoot!" Well, that thing just kept on humming, and it kept on changing shape and everything. It was like, oh, this is eerie. And he finally pulled out his gun, and he shot every bullet from his gun. And nothing happened. It kept on coming. So the man was so frightened, he dropped his gun, and he ran all the way back into town. He ran so far, he ran all the way down to the Griswold Inn, where he knew somebody would be there. And he ran in to tell his story, and he refused to go back outside because there was a ghost, he thought, running around the streets of Essex. Well, the night passed. The storm passed. It was another beautiful morning. And the Essex first selectman went down to do his duty that he did every morning, and he went to open the gate, and he approaches the cemetery, and there's the police car. Its engine is still running. And he comes closer, and he looks down on the ground, and there's the police officer's gun. He looks around, no police officer, and he notices all around him all these newspapers had blown all over the place. Oh my gosh, my newspaper. I left it on the bench yesterday. Oh my gosh. Well, he yelled out for the police officer, nothing happened, so he decided he was going to walk around town to see if he could find him. And he walked and he walked and he walked, and he finally knew he could find somebody down at the Griswold Inn. He walked in there, and there was a police officer having breakfast and telling his tale of the ghosts down at the cemetery. As the first selectman listened, and listened more closely, he just started laughing. He said, you can't believe there was a ghost out there. He said, I left my newspaper on the bench. The newspapers were blowing all over the place. He just saw the newspapers blowing all over the place. That's silly. Well, he gathered up the police officer right in the middle of breakfast, and he dragged him all the way up the street, back over to the cemetery. And they came there, and of course, they came back, and they found the car. He showed him where he had found the gun. He picked it up and handed it to him. The eerie thing about it is that there wasn't a newspaper in sight. It hadn't been the newspapers that were going all over the place. And to this day, no one's allowed to go into the cemetery past sunset. That's why they have sun up to sunset. That's the time that you can go to the cemetery down there. I promised a spooky story. You got a spooky story. Now, friends, we know these kind of ghost stories are told across every nation and every culture. We find that old. Shakespeare told a ghost story. Dickens, Edgar Allan Poe. There are people telling those stories all time and space. And today's gospel story could almost qualify as the same, couldn't it? It's sort of eerie that we read this story of someone coming back to life. It's sort of an odd story. Usually the ghost stories are told and they tell a moral story. They tell a story that's something we need to learn, something we need to understand about. Well, today's gospel lesson we read in the book of John that Lazarus has died. And Jesus goes to the tomb, right? And he calls out, "Lazarus, come out!" And he does. A man who's been dead for 4 days comes walking out. The perfect setup for a moral story. You know, Jesus is seen doing this in other gospels, you know. It wasn't just Lazarus, but we saw this morning with the kids that the young girl, the daughter of Jairus, was also brought back to life. These stories tell of, especially in the book of John, seemingly otherworldly abilities of Jesus. He's something special. It's a declaration that there's something different about Jesus that most of us perhaps couldn't attain ourselves. And we even see John telling us that Jesus says that too. Jesus tells us that I am the way, I am the resurrection, I am the light. Now, I do not know how things happened back then. I just don't. But what I do know is that there are numerous stories of Jesus doing things that none of us could possibly accomplish. We read stories in the Bible like Jesus healing the sick. Miracles there. Miracles of Jesus changing water into wine. Miracles of Jesus walking on water. Feeding thousands of people with just a little bit of food. And bringing people back to life, children and adults, from what was a certain death. In today's story, 4 days of death. Now, let's face it. Some people just don't care to want to believe any of these stories. It's just the way it is. Some people refuse to listen and even ridicule the very name of Jesus. And you know what? I sort of don't blame some of them. Through our lifetimes, we hear stories of people doing things that shouldn't have been able to have been accomplished. And the problem is that when we hear all those sometimes, I think people are most unhappy about those kind of stories, not because of the story, not because of the person in them, but sometimes because of the storyteller themselves. Lots of times people use these stories for their own purpose. Sometimes they tell us stories so that they themselves, the storyteller, can be important, rather than the story of Jesus. Too often the story gets lost and used. Now, did Jesus ever do any of these miracles? Let me ask you this. Any of the miracles that you have heard about, did he ever do any of them to hurt anyone? No, I heard none. Did Jesus ever try to make someone do something that they didn't want to do? One person saying that. Might have been legion coming out of one of the people. Did Jesus ever profit from any of these miracles? No. Did Jesus take power away from anyone or intend to keep someone from doing well for themselves? No. You see, Jesus and the miracles of Jesus are rather pure in form and in substance. And I'll be honest to tell you that at times I have doubts about some of these things. Do you not? It's an amazing thing, some of the things that happen. Now, whether they were handed down to us exactly the way they happened, I'm not sure about. But I'm certain about this. Who was Jesus? A righteous man. Who was Jesus? Jesus a kind man? Who was Jesus a compassionate and passionate man? Caring. He was unique with this especially. Jesus was someone special, someone capable of helping others grow from who they were into something new and alive. Today, we read that Jesus restored a man who was dead to the world into new life. I believe he accomplished that very task. I don't understand the particulars, but I believe in this man, Jesus, and I believe in his mission of love and hope and compassion and encouragement and empowerment of all of us. Go ahead and mock and ridicule me, the storyteller, but leave that man alone. I believe and I pray that you would accept that he was someone of greatness, the likes that have never been seen before, and maybe even after. I pray that you take these stories of miracle, of wonder, and of awe, and I pray that you allow them to flow into your life, and that you believe that new life is available to you. My friends, may the Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray.